Hello, I'm Andrea, and I'm joined again by Bronwyn and Becky. And today we are going to be talking about immune system support and, how as moms, it's obviously always our goal to keep our families healthy and strong. A lot of times in the process, we are ignoring, our own health, kind of putting ourselves last. And so, yeah, we're just going to focus on talking about how to support immune systems in our families in real life without fear, without pressure, without overdoing it, without, running to the doctor for every teeny little sniffle. What does it look like in real life as naturally minded moms to take care of our families? And so I know, Bronlyn, let's start with you because you had a real life experience this week with the topic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what was going on this week for you?
Yeah, I came down with a head cold this week. Actually started with my husband. We took a trip, and so I think he picked it up like on the plane or something. And so last week when he was sick, it's not like a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. It's just a head cold and a cough. But just the whole time he was sick, I was taking care of him, but just saying like, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. I felt fine. Um, and I did actually do some good support for myself last week. It wasn't all my kids having the illness. Um, Actually, my youngest has had a cough he had started a cough before that. So it's possible my husband actually got it from my son. It was just been a very slow moving kind of thing. Anyway, and not a big deal. Like it hasn't taken us out of life totally or anything like that. Here's though, like I have been really strict about my own diet for metabolic reasons the last year. On the weekend, for whatever reason, I just caved and like had chocolate. Like I had, but sugar. Really, the thing is the sugar. Chocolate isn't a bad thing, but the sugar. I did that and immediately like felt the scratchy throat coming on.
Mm.
And so anyway, I kind of like did myself in, and then I had the illness, and I got through it faster than the other people in my family got through it. So I did some of the things more intensely for myself. I don't know. Well, I was going to my husband too. I think for me, like a number one, so adults, it feels like rest, sleep is so important
Mhm.
because like that's what we're not getting so often. Um, yeah, so I was pulling out kind of all my things, and I can talk about that when if we want to talk about like our little toolkits that we each probably have collected over the years and feel like our go-tos. But I would say like really we all just want to stay healthy, right? I mean, need to have a toolkit. We need to have good mindsets when we are ill, but we need to be like living a lifestyle that keeps us healthy. I'm not trying to say like you should never have sugar. I just know that for me, it was a pretty poor choice when I was fighting off a virus and feeling fine, but then to just like take myself out with sugar, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Other
that's
times,
something I always try to remind my kids that when they're either like starting to not feel good or maybe even when like there's a lot of people around them not feeling good.
mm-hmm.
Like I always try to remind my kids like maybe you should, take the sugar down, not use much sugar, think about be mindful, not eat sugar when you're sick. Like I just think it's a good rule.
And how many times have we like sent a kid to like summer camp, a place where they can like eat candy constantly,
Oh,
and then they come back sick, right? Or Christmas or these like sugar holidays, right? And then we kind of feel like it's why did that happen? Well, I mean, it's really pretty hard for the immune system to handle sugar, but um,
I've seen one of those memes. It's not cold and flu season. It's, candy at Halloween, pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, and, sugar cookies at Christmas
yeah,
season.
yeah, that's true.
I think what I was most impressed with, though, Bronwyn, with you this week was that you said, I'm going to take off work. Well, quote unquote work
Mhm,
on Thursday.
mhm.
You made the choice not to go in and teach your kids at their co-op and find coverage for that so that you could rest,
Yeah,
right? Because you knew how important that was and that you are worth that, right? Like you're not letting anybody down by not being there. You can find coverage and you can take care of yourself so that you can show up the best, for your family.
yeah.
Um,
I
let's
think like rest feels like such a struggle with guilt around that because I was I'd had this head cold and already by Wednesday I felt like, okay, I think I'm turning the corner, but I had several things on my calendar and I canceled them. But then the Thursday I also canceled. I was, yeah, slated to teach for 6 hours and I had to get four different tutors to cover. So that was not like simple. And you're asking people to cover, last minute. There's like this guilt piece, and yet realizing like we all actually should all do this more and support each
Mhm,
other more in just
mhm.
stepping back out of the commitments we have and resting. And so I did. It was sunny here this week, so I sat in the sunshine while my kids went and took their classes. It was very restorative.
Good. That's another thing that I always like, at least instruct my children to do. It's good that you did it yourself, but like when they're sick, I'm like, just go
Get
get some sun on
outside.
your face, like go stand out in the sun, go like, yeah, just feel warm in the sun. Like, yeah, or even when it's cold outside, I'm like, just go stand in the sun. Like, even if you're not feeling well. I think it's so
And
helpful.
I think at this point, my son realizes that it really does help. I think the last time he was sick and I like shoved him outside, I was like, just go sit, just put your feet on the ground and just be outside for a little while. And he did come back in and say, oh, that did feel good. I feel better. But it's some of the simple things, and let's get to that in a little bit here. But I want to start us off by kind of taking us back to when our kiddos were little, because we all have kids who are in the teen years mainly now, and so we've had a lot of years of mothering from baby on. And Bronwyn, you just sent us such a powerful video from what's her name, Joetta.
Joette Calabrese, yeah, she's a homeopathic teacher.
Yeah, and it was so good just about the power and the intuition and the wisdom that we have as moms that sometimes I think we allow medical professionals to take from us, that we have to somehow listen to all of their guidance and everything they say and do exactly what they say, as opposed to realizing that we are the ones that know our children the very best. We are the ones that notice if something is off, or feel fine about something that maybe they've told us is, I'm thinking about the chart, like if, they're in the 2 percentile, but hello, they were a small baby and they're growing and they're growing, but the concern, like, oh, you got to get the baby to eat more into whatever, as the mom, if your baby is thriving and doing well. So with that, I want to just take us back to our own journeys as moms of littles. And what did it look like? What were you learning about this whole process of immune support and, how to handle things when the kiddos got sick? And I know, Becky, your journey is a little bit different with just some of the stuff that came up with your son. But if we go back to the very beginning, how were you handling things? What were you learning in this journey? So let's start with you, Becky.
Yeah, it gets a little hazy sometimes just because of everything with my son. Some of that was really hard because it wasn't how his body typically, or it wasn't how my other children's body would handle things, right? So, um, like we've always done like fevers, like normally at home, haven't rushed to the doctor. At one time, we were going to a doctor that did do like kinesiology, and so he would be doing muscle testing. So it was funny what the things that would come up. Sometimes, like Piper, she's my one, like my youngest, and my one that would has always historically, excuse me, gotten sick the least. And I remember one time he tested her in his office, and he goes, "Oh, she has the flu, but she's like doing somersaults down the carpet." And I'm like, really? Like, I'm like, that's so weird. And like, I literally, it's funny because Piper like never stops moving ever. And literally, we always have said, she's 13 now, and we've said ever since she was little, like, you know, Piper's sick because she like falls asleep on the couch. And she's not like, she's done that probably 3 or 4 times in her entire life. Like, so with her, that's the other thing is like each one of my children really is different. And as moms, yeah, we do know that our kids are different. And so people do act different to either even different illnesses, when like a certain illness goes to the house and one person gets it one way, and like Bronwyn said, I got over it faster than other people in my family. And that's one thing to just stay attentive to, I think. And that's one thing that medical professionals unfortunately miss because they're not with your children all the time. So as moms, it's just really good to know those things. Unfortunately, with Caden, sometimes or many times, if he gets sick and is not hungry, typically we say, okay, if your body's not hungry, don't eat. With him, we kind of have to force him to eat, unfortunately. And we know that if we don't, he just keeps kind of going downhill a little bit. So it's like we gotta force him to eat, and then he ends up feeling better. Um, but regardless, when my kids were very small, we started using essential oils, and we use them on their feet a lot. We use them down their spine a lot. And we always saw them, like, the oils, like, super supportive with their bodies. Um, and so that was just like automatically one, and I have a lot of other go-tos too, but that was like one of our major go-tos was the essential oils, and even other tools like elderberry syrup and stuff like that. So that's kind of yeah, we've tried to be preventative. We've tried to get things on the like scratchy throat in if possible. I do really like using homeopathics. I've seen a lot of response with my kids with those.
Explain to us, Becky, if you would, specifically like what a homeopathic is in comparison to some of these other modalities, because like you can hear like homeopathic as though it kind of is like everything, like nutrition and essential oils and like all these things are homeopathic, but homeopathics are something really specific. Can you explain those?
Yeah. So typically homeopathics come in like a sugar pellet a lot of times, or you can get them in like a tincture. Those are the most common ways to use a homeopathic. What they are, in essence, is there's something that's actually like would be toxic in high amounts. That's highly diluted down, so it's no longer toxic for the body. Like it's diluted down so much that it can't hurt you. They're harmless as far as giving someone a homeopathic, and they come on a sugar pill. They work really bizarrely for most people. It's really hard to understand how homeopathic works because it's very opposite of how how we think of as a supplement working, or how we think of as like Western medical, like a Western medical, treatment working. So when you take, it's basically a frequency based modality where you're taking, for example, belladonna is a homeopathic remedy, and it's typically given for people with like in fever, or like if you're very like even red in the face, or like something like that. So you typically give a homeopathic remedy very closely related to your symptoms. So it's kind of like this like cancels like idea, which a lot of people have a really hard time wrapping their head around because we're just not used to understanding it. But it's very frequency based, and I have seen it like super effective when we get the right remedy. A lot of times the hard part is getting the right remedy, especially if you're not very educated on how the system works. But when you do, I think it's like amazing. And very harmless, like as far as if you get the wrong remedy, you're not hurting anybody.
I tend to think of it kind of like if there was a good kind of equivalent in Western medicine, the idea of a vaccine, like where you're going to give something that's toxic and you're going to have the body go like, oh, okay, I recognize that's toxic, so now I know how to address it. So that's
Right.
the same idea. The difference, like you were saying, is there's no you can't be harmed. Like in hundreds of years of using homeopathics, no one has ever been hospitalized or harmed by a homeopathic. And it's like it's diluted, like they'll take a drop of like belladonna, which is an herb, and it could be toxic. Like if you just ate the herb, it'd be a poisonous herb. But you take like one, like you take a tincture of that, you put a drop into a big jar of water, and then you shake it up, and you take a drop of that and put it into another big jar of water, and you shake it up, and you do that like 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally nothing left in the last bottle, but it has had that like energetic imprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then that last bottle is now something that your body can read that energy like, oh, I see that
Mhm.
and then respond to it, but it's not going to be toxic.
Right, which is how it's really fascinating.
Yeah, so fascinating.
But right, it's so there's no toxicity to it, which I think is amazing because you don't have to worry about getting the wrong remedy. And you can try different remedies. And like I'll do some research on remedies. And a lot of times when I think I have the right one, I'll even use it like every 15 minutes for a couple hours. And then if I'm seeing progress, a lot of times like I'll decrease the frequency of use. And sometimes I've even given like the right remedy my son, especially, and he'll like only have to have it one time,
Hmm.
which are my favorite times to use it because I'm like, that was so cool. Like
That's
he
awesome.
was like a totally different state. I give it to him once, I come back and he's like up and like going, and I'm like, this is crazy. And it is totally worked like that for us sometimes.
It's definitely one of those areas where I feel pretty clueless. I mean, other than what's the one for the flu that's like everybody knows. It starts with an O.
The oscillinium or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah, that one. Which we have seen really good results with that one. But you know, I where I get overwhelmed with it is okay. So for this cough, there's like 8 different ones, and so I'm like, okay, wait, is the cough more like this, or more like this, or more like this one? Well, it's kind of this, and it's kind of this. So when Grant, so we are a non-vaccinating family, and so our children have gotten some of the vaccine preventable quote unquote diseases. They got chicken pox, and last year whooping cough went through our house. And anyway, Grant had it the worst out of all of us. And so I was trying like remedies. I mean, we must have tried, 4 different of the remedies for coughs, and I never found something that worked. And then we tried it for Bennett had molluscum contagiosum, and so we were trying to figure out which wart ones to use for that. I think it was what is it, Thura, something like that. And we tried one other one and just couldn't figure it out. So it's something that I want to learn more about because I feel totally ill-equipped in that area. Um, yeah, just to be able to choose the right ones. But I found it was a referral from a friend of mine for a homeopath who I think he's in Indonesia. Uh, but anyway, I mean, he's like, oh, clearly very well versed. My friend is very well versed in homeopathy, and she recommended him. She's like, he's amazing. So I haven't set the appointment yet, but I think I'm going to because I've had a goiter for years. I dealt with thyroid stuff, but that's all resolved in terms of like the numbers, and I don't show, Hashimoto's markers, and everything like looks good with the thyroid because I've been doing the things to nourish, but I still have the goiter. There's still that inflammation there that'll kind of come and go, which seems like with my um hormonal cycle, little like it'll get bigger parts of the month and smaller. Totally interesting side note that I don't know. I'm giving it time to see if this is true. But since I started taking the balance and burn, which some of you listening will know what that is, some of you will probably have no idea what we're talking about. But it is a plant-based natural GLP-1 support system that our company launched. And I'm not an ideal client for it, but I wanted to kind of try it and just to see so I could talk about it with people. But since I've been taking that, it has not swelled.
Interesting.
It's
That's
still there. I can still feel it, but I've gone through my cycle and I haven't noticed that it's getting bigger at different, times
Oh,
of the month.
that's really
So I'm just
interesting.
thinking about the inflammation reduction from the system. Okay, so let's get back
I
on.
I know that's a rabbit trail, but can we go a little bit further? Because I'm just so
Sure, sure. Go ahead.
okay. So tell me, was your goiter swelling more during the second half of your cycle, during your luteal phase when progesterone is supposed to rise? Because that's pro-thyroid. So I could see that making like the thyroid act more. Or was it during the beginning of your cycle when there was less progesterone, so less anti-inflammatory?
Second week as we were moving towards ovulation, like as all of the hormones are kind of rising.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's just a little bit more inflammatory week, and that's why.
maybe. Maybe. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go with Bronwyn. I mean, you have a big family. So I
Hmm.
can only imagine what illness going through your house looked like when kids were little.
We've had a few
Tell,
doozies over
tell us a
time.
little bit about that.
Lord, prevent the stomach flu from coming to our homes, right? Like this
It's like
should
the
be like
plague.
the banner over our doors.
Yeah.
Right.
Although when
Um,
we got it recently, or when I came home from Utah with it, I got it and then Kaden got it, but then nobody else got it.
Hallelujah.
And I was
yeah,
literally loading up on inner defense.
yeah.
Like I was loading the whole
Mhm.
family up on inner defense. The girls didn't get it. Jonathan seemed like he was maybe coming down with it almost. And then I was like, take this. And he was fine. So,
Inner defense is a staple. So tell the audience that might not know what is an inner defense.
okay, inner defense is it's essential oil capsule, basically. It has coconut oil in it. So it's already diluted with an oil. But then it has oregano, thyme, and lemongrass in it. That's it, right? Oregano,
And
thyme,
thieves.
lemongrass. Oh, wait. And then clove, lemon, eucalyptus, rosemary, and cinnamon.
Which is thieves.
Oh, yeah. It's just the thieves blend. So it's basically, yeah, those extra oils in the thieves blend. I did find a study online that was talking about the norovirus, which is the stomach bug, and lemongrass. And that like it seems like very few things actually deactivate the virus, but lemongrass in this particular study was like I was like, oh, like came up as something that may deactivate the norovirus. So I was like, what can I find with lemongrass? I'm like slapping it on people's feet. I'm like putting it in the diffuser, and then
Lemongrass is one
swap
of
inner
those
defense. Huh?
lemongrass is one of those super powerful oils that I feel like does a lot of things. My mom, and then Bronwyn, I want to get to you and your family, but my mom, she had a scan of her face done. She was getting some allergy treatment stuff, and there was a ton of inflammation in her nasal cavity. And so they like did a swab, sent it away just to see if there was any like bacteria or whatever going on. And um, is MRSA in her
Mm.
nasal cavity. Yeah.
Wow.
So they wanted to put her on 2 months of an antibiotic. And I said, Mom, you can do that, but can we just try something for a couple of weeks and just see? Like, I mean, you've been living with this. Like, I mean, sure, it's an emergency, but it's not an emergency. Like, you've been dealing with this for a while. So, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to say MRSA. That's just what came out. It's staph infection. So what it was staph infection, but not necessarily MRSA. So she had staph. And so I knew that lemongrass was good for that. And so we just had her do that in a nasal rinse daily. And I mean, she was really good about it. Morning and night, she would do the nasal rinse with that. Just
How
saline
did you
solution.
dilute that? That's a hot
Just one
oil.
drop, one drop. It really wasn't bad. I tried it too. You would think, right? Because
Yeah.
especially like on the skin, lemongrass can feel kind of itchy and stuff. But so she was doing one drop in with the saline, and she did it morning and night, and she did it for a month. She went back and got tested again, and there were no traces of staph.
Amazing.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
amazing. So amazing. But
I
yeah,
have,
I would have been concerned about that too. So we just
mhm.
kind of tested. I was like, Mom, it might burn. I don't know, but it's so good for, helping with stuff. And she said, no, it's not. It wasn't bad. And so I tried it too, and it really wasn't bad. I mean, there's like a slight, like you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
But it really wasn't unmanageable at
The
all.
saline water diluted it some.
Yeah,
I've
totally.
had so many clients who have conquered chronic sinus infections through doing nasal rinses with frankincense, which is immune boosting. I've not had them do lemongrass ever,
Mhm.
or frankincense, tea tree, and lavender together. But here's the thing, like the sinuses are not very vascular. So when you take an antibiotic and it goes into your stomach and then it goes systemic, you're actually not getting very much antibiotic to that local
Mhm.
spot. So anything nasal, I think, is for sure more powerful to do it as a topical, as a rinse, right? Than to try and hit it through the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Plus, you have all that fallout in your gut when
All
you
the
take an
fallout.
antibiotic.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
she was thrilled with the results. Okay,
Amazing.
take us back, Bronwyn.
Okay, well, I just want to go back to inner defense, which Becky was talking about, because that's one we use this week. And I think that is such a staple to have on hand. Like I have several bottles in my cabinet because you never know when, you're going to have something come through your family. I think this is so fascinating because when I take that capsule, I've known people who like will go on an airplane trip and just take one just kind of like insurance. If I ever do that, I can't do that. I don't do that because I've tried to, and it's like my body goes, no, thank you. I am not dealing with an illness. please no. And so I start burping up like oregano flavor and thyme flavor. It's not burning or hurting anything. I just know my body's like, no thanks. If I have an infect, like if I have a bladder infection just starting to come on, or if I have a cold, or any of those things that my immune system needs support, I can take one of these capsules every hour and my body just says thank you. I don't know. It's so amazing. So
Interesting.
this morning I gave one to my son because he said, I think I get the scratchy throat now. And I was like, take this. And if you start burping oregano, then don't take any more. But if you don't, then take more. Like I've had it. It's so amazing how that little, like, I don't know, it's like a little clue as to whether your body needs more or not. But
That's so funny. Like that's a good tip. I didn't know about that tip.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, just push through.
You know,
You're gonna
I mean,
burp it up, just push
when I
through.
was giving it to them when I had been sick, just to make sure they didn't, I only had them take one a day, which obviously they didn't need more, but yeah.
yeah, mostly kids wouldn't need one an hour for sure. But I think last week my husband took several in a day, and I take several in a day. And yeah, like with the UTI, I could do one an hour. I mean, yeah. Um,
And I do
so
think some people are more sensitive to it because of the oregano in it. Like my husband, like I can take it on an empty stomach, no problem. And he has to have like a full meal before he would even touch inner defense because it kind of upsets his
yeah,
stomach.
It's
So,
interesting because I've taken it, I mean, I've been taking it for a decade now. I remember one time, just one time I took it and I think I had an empty stomach and I felt horrible,
hmm,
like very nauseous. But most of the time now I can take it on an empty stomach and I'm totally fine. So
yeah,
I don't know what was going on.
whatever was
I
going
was
on.
like, oh, I felt so bad. And then I like got over it. But then that's never happened again. And that was like, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe.
wow. I think sometimes I actually burp up the lemongrass. So I wonder if it's like my body's taking what it needs. But if it doesn't need all of it, it's like, no, thank you.
Let me give that back to you.
Yeah, let me just bring that back.
Enjoy.
So it's interesting because like if we take a broad spectrum antibiotic, it's going to go in and kill like bacteria, good bacteria we want in our stomach and our intestines. But essential oils are quickly absorbed, so they actually don't do the decimation to our gut. Even though they're antibacterial, our body quickly absorbs them. They are absorbed so quickly and they don't damage the gut
Yeah,
microbiome.
there's like a wisdom in them, with them
Yeah.
being from nature.
I
Uh,
will say there are companies that do like a coated oregano for gut, like as a gut antibiotic, and that will change the gut. But they actually have to coat it so that it gets all the way into the like intestines. Whereas like this formula, you're just going to absorb it pretty quickly before it makes its way there. So, yeah. Okay, back to my family. Here's what I've learned. Well, I have 6 kids, so when an illness goes through, um, I think one thing that's important is just like as a mom to have a mindset of like, okay, I have a new job this week. And it was years ago where it was like devastating, like, oh no, now we're sick, and feeling all the FOMO of like, we're not able to do all the things that we had planned this week. And also, I probably failed because my kids are sick. And that mindset has shifted for me to realize that illness is a normal part of a healthy life. When kids are little, they especially need to like build their little library of viruses that their body knows. Oh,
mhm.
this is what I am. This is what I respond to. This is what I'm, you get an illness, you conquer it, and then it's like a little library that, like, I know how to deal with that in the future, right? So we're strengthening their immune system. Not we are strengthening, but they're just going to naturally strengthen their immune systems by being out in the world and having little viruses come and go. And there's like a whole list of childhood illnesses that actually strengthen them, including the fact that a fever, we're not talking about a high fever, we're not talking about 105, we're just talking about now 102 feels pretty high, but that is actually still an exercising fever. Their immune system gets exercised. And there are studies to show that kids who have these kinds of fever don't have the rates of childhood cancer. So we don't know if it just like types their immune system, that their immune system is now like strong and ready to go and able to deal with the cancer, on a daily basis, because we all deal with cancer cells on a daily basis and we just get rid of them. Or is it the fact that the fever itself actually wipes out the cancer cells in that week and they had just basically a clear reset detox?
Hmm.
And so that's another thing is I've just come to realize like illness is a way that our bodies detox. You think about all the snot, vomit, diarrhea. I mean, it's all gross, but it's all this like detox out of the body, and the body is having a huge event of clearing.
Mhm.
And so recognizing that as a healthy support, in myself, again, this week, I'm tea, like herbal tea on the repeat, and chicken soup because it's known as like the Jewish penicillin, like grandmother's always making chicken soup. It really does build our immune system, but just the fact that it's soup, that it's broth-based soup is so nourishing and hydrating, a good salty, brothy soup. So I got some chickens and cooked them, cooked the carcasses, and had the salty broth. And then my daughter helped me because I wasn't feeling 100% at all. So my adult daughter came in and like made soup with me so I could have. I still have I'm just finishing off my pot of chicken soup, chicken veggie. Um, so for kids, I always like to bring in those things. But my mindset is, okay, we're having a different kind of week, and this isn't going to be a bad week. As far as mothering goes, I realize like this is my chance to be the nurse mom for my kids, to give them care, to be hands-on, to give them tea with honey in it. They're going to sit on the couch and read books or watch cartoons. Like it's going to be different, and we want to make it as fun as possible, but in a very slow way. And I should be able to enjoy that as a mom and not feel like this was a failure. This is not a failure. This is a way for me to connect in a different way. Kids love it when we touch them too. And I feel like I get too busy on the daily and don't do enough of that. So when they're sick, I always do essential oil massages, especially on their spine. I like to do the raindrop oils. Again, some of those heavy hitters like oregano and thyme, and others that really help with their immune system. Invariably, when I do a raindrop on one of my kids, they fall asleep during that. It's like putting essential oils on their spine and on their feet. And then I just cover them back up and they sleep. And then they usually wake up and their fever is broken. And sometimes they cycle back and do another fever the next day, but I can see that I'm like supporting their body to do its job of building that immune library. Um, yeah, back to tea and hydration. I know this is just like such a small thing, but um, when my oldest was 18 months old, she was cutting teeth, and I think we were just busy. She was my only child. Like I was not as busy as I'm now, but I wasn't kind of clued in. Like when you're cutting teeth and you're a little snotty, you need more hydration. And so she developed ear infections, double ear infections. And then she's pulling at her ears and she was hurting. And I was like, oh no. I realized she had ear infections. And then her fever started to rise. And I um I felt guilt that I had like allowed her to get into that situation because I hadn't hydrated her. And the guilt and the fear around it took me to the doctor and put her on an antibiotic. And then we dealt with years of yeast UTI for this little girl. And finally, after years of working on it, pulled out of that cycle. But then there was a lot of regret around that too, right? And I look back and I think I could have been, I could have avoided the whole situation by just more hydration, just giving her more liquids, and probably less dairy. Like cut the milk, but instead do water and tea. I like tea because it's somewhat therapeutic itself, but it's like a treat for my kids. So if I would do like peppermint tea with honey in it, they'll like drink it all day long because I don't give them like sweets all day. I don't give them juice and sweets type of thing. So this was a treat. I could have avoided it. And then if I had just like calmed down and not leaned into this like fear or guilt, then I could have actually probably helped her conquer the ear infection in other ways without running to the doctor and getting onto that cycle of antibiotic.
I had a lot of the same guilt when my son got really sick when he was 5, and he did get in the ICU then, and that was before he had any kind of diagnosis. But I was literally like, he was so ended up so dehydrated, and
Mhm.
he was drinking water, but he was drinking plain water.
Mhm.
And I didn't know the value at the time of electrolytes,
Mhm.
like of broth when you're sick. Um, and while I was like trying to keep him hydrated, it's like I had no clue that he needed like minerals in his water. Like people don't tell parents that a lot of times, even. I feel like a lot of parents just don't know that. And I carry guilt for like similar guilt for this a long time because of that too.
It's not in our parenting manual.
It's not.
So, so many of the things we just learn along the way, right? I want to go back to something you said, Bronwyn, about illness being sort of this detox for the body. We're releasing like a ton of mucus and just expelling. And so, really, I think changing our perspective, especially, well, with ourselves, obviously, but also with our kiddos, that like this is not a bad thing when your kids get sick. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. They are detoxing stuff that they didn't need. And so if you kind of think of it like as a cyclical, like a couple times a year, like a house cleaning, so to speak, I think it can help to take some of the stress out of the idea of illness.
Mhm.
Um, and then also just looking at your doctor as a resource. I just want moms to feel empowered.
Mhm.
Like that you know your children more than anybody does. And so trust your own gut, trust your intuition. I remember when Grant he was probably 9 months old and he got croup. And it was like it was the first like illness. And so I was a new mom. I was pretty freaked out. Um, and so I took him to the doctor because anybody whose kids have gotten croup, like the sound of the cough is like, oh my gosh, what is this?
Yeah, I can
And
remember that
so
one too.
yeah, so they gave me albuterol for him and sent me home with um, the machine to use the albuterol in, and I mean, it helped, right? But I learned since then. I remember, and I can't even remember who it was, but I remember it was a woman who'd been using essential oils for a long time who said, RC is great for when they get that barky cough, and you can add it to 1 drop to saline and kind of do it the same way you would do albuterol, and it works beautifully. And so I chose to do that the next time because that tended to be my kids' illness of choice. Like if they got sick, it was the creepy cough.
Mhm.
And so I did that the next time at that first barky cough where I was like, oh my goodness, like I think they're getting croup again, and used the machine with saline and 1 drop of RC, and it just didn't turn into anything. Like it stopped it in its tracks. And so that kind of then became my thing. Every time they would start with the barky cough, they got that right away. And it really, really helped. So just the little things you learn along the way. And I don't remember how bad it was at 9 months. I don't know if it was because it was the first time, because I'd never experienced illness in my child, or maybe it was worse than the next times. Maybe I wouldn't make a different decision if I could go back. But I think it really is just about trusting your mother intuition and gut, and realizing that the people you go to see, they work for you. They
Mhm.
are a resource, but they're not the end all be all. You don't have to do what they're asking you to do. You get to decide as the mom of your child. So I just want us all to feel empowered in that.
I think that's so good. And I mean, we're in such a privileged place where we have these emergency medical facilities available to us, right? But that shouldn't undermine our ability to do the things at home that really support health. And specifically when the things at home can get to like supporting the root cause versus suppressing symptoms.
Yes.
And so much of modern medicine has focused on symptoms. And for good reason. I mean, if you cannot breathe and you go to the hospital and they put you on albuterol if you're having an asthmatic attack, and suddenly you can get oxygen in your lungs, that is life-saving. And I
Mhm.
don't want to disregard that. Um, but if a child is dealing with a cough and then they have that symptom suppressed, when they don't need to have that much intervention, their
Mhm.
body actually hasn't conquered that. And it hasn't put the book on the shelf yet, right? It hasn't built its library yet. It's like, I still don't think I can conquer this.
Yeah.
And so they're likely going to have it come up again. And Andre, what you just said was like the next time it came up, which it's going to come, probably going to come up again when we just suppress that symptom. Then you use something that was actually assisting the body in coughing it out all the way. And then once it had conquered and once it had like done that victory and knew like I can do this, it doesn't have to keep repeating the same fight again and again. Um, when your story reminded me of a client I have. As a teen girl, she was having pneumonia every year, and so they started doing the nebulizer with essential oils. We're talking 1 drop in a lot of saline, so it's very diluted. And that stopped her from having to go to the hospital annually for those kinds of treatments. She conquered it. And like, hey, that's great. It's great when you don't have to keep going, cycling back through the same illness, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's good too when you can recognize that the body has this intelligence to heal. But of course, there are also times when our body's so stressed that it needs that extra help. And it's okay to go to the
Yeah.
emergency room or the doctor when needed. And I think part of really being our own advocate and really for whether it's for ourselves or for our kids is just recognizing that my body is intelligent, but yes, I mean, there's times that it may need some extra help and just making that a like intelligent assessment case by case.
I think for moms, I want them to just trust their own intuition more.
Mhm.
Um, if you feel like it's time to go, it's time to go in, right?
No.
And
Yes.
Andre,
Yeah.
you were saying like, do we regret that? Would I do any different? Like in a sense, I do look back on when I took my 18-month-old in to get an antibiotic. And on the other hand, I know that it was part of my journey and her journey,
Journey. Yes.
right?
Yes. Part of your learning
So
journey. Yeah.
yeah, like I wouldn't have the confidence now for like the next things, maybe the bigger things, if I hadn't gone through that and I had seen like this is what they have to offer and there are pros and cons. And so next time I'm going to look at what is offered and say, do I want both sides of that? You know?
Okay, before we close, I want us to do kind of a rapid round of what are your supports just on a daily basis, just to support the system in general, not when something's coming on, but just to proactively keep your kids' bodies healthy, your own bodies healthy. What are some of the things that you do daily? And then we're going to do a round of like, okay, what are your best tools when they're sick? We already talked about some of them, but we can just do kind of a rapid fire of some things that come up. So, Becky, why don't you start?
Okay, we do electrolytes every day. When I give my kids their water bottle for school, like there's some electrolytes in there. So I'm always trying to get minerals in them that way. I've talked about this before, but the plant stem cells that worked so well for my son, we use those every single day. I give them to my kids twice a day. I give them to myself twice a day. And then I'm always using in my diffusers like essential oils around my home. Like that's just a non-negotiable. And one thing I really love right now that we use pretty much all the time is just like some functional mushrooms. And so we use, I mean, I'm pretty much giving them, like, I've gone through different periods where I've given them more supplements, less supplements myself. And I've got, my own stuff that I take. But for them, I'm giving them like just a couple capsules of functional mushrooms a day, every day.
Awesome. Bronwyn, you go.
Okay, I think our main thing is food, like just to get good, like well-raised protein, meats, eggs in our diet daily. That just builds their bodies and keeps them like sleeping well, functioning well. Also, we do fermented foods, whether it's kefir or sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is an amazing source of really bioavailable vitamin C. And then we also like today, because this cold had gone through, and like not everybody's even gotten it, but I just handed out the chewable vitamin C's. I love those Young Living chewable ones. They're from fruit. So they are whole food. And one thing is I don't give high doses of vitamin C on the regular because that's just extracted out of food and it can cause imbalance. But when we have like the food-based vitamin C, that's really great. So that and or the fruits that contain it, and, including Ningxia red is, like cherry and pomegranate and Ningxia wolfberry, these fruits that have vitamin C and minerals in them. We also do some electrolytes. I wouldn't say that all my kids take electrolytes every day, but I do kind of push like the magnesium heavy electrolytes. A lot of them like that before bed. And trying to avoid the sugar. Also, like it's a balance, right? Like I'm not going to tell my kids, it was just Valentine's Day this week at school. So they all traded candies. Like, okay, well, I actually love that more and more I'm seeing people trade little toys and like sweet notes and not just candy, but a little candy occasionally is fine. And then sleep, focusing on sleep, which essential oil diffusing comes in with that because that can be so helpful for just having solid sleep. And then being outside in sunshine and exercise helps us have good sleep at night. So I think that's our daily, I think it looks kind of normal. I'm also not using like harsh chemicals. Like we don't use like Clorox. We don't Clorox everything because actually we wash our hands with natural soap without antibacterials, people, because we want to keep our microbiomes intact. And so we're eating our fermented foods for the inside, sometimes occasionally taking probiotics inside. And then our bodies themselves have protective bacteria that we want to keep intact. We wash ourselves, but we don't sterilize it. We're not supposed to be sterile.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that list, I think mine is very similar to yours, Bronwyn. We've never tried stem cells, Becky, so I feel like you need to do an episode. We need to just interview you on stem cells, in one of these upcoming episodes. But only thing I would add, I don't think you said beef liver. My kids do take beef liver,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say most days, just as like it's kind of like nature's multivitamin. Um,
We do that too. Yeah.
and then, yeah, but I feel like I just would echo all of the things that you just said. So with you. And as you were talking about Valentine's and sugar and all of those things, we are not perfect in our house. Like my kids do have some sugar. They occasionally have processed food. It is not a staple. It's not majority of the time, but I kind of love it when they get a real dose of crud because they feel it. Like, and so then they're able to kind of self-regulate and understand like, oh, that's not, I do not like how it just happened last weekend. Bennett was somewhere and she ended up having a lot of processed foods and she felt really cruddy that night. And so it becomes this self-awareness of like, okay, when I do this, this is how I feel. Like when I'm eating at home with my family, I feel good. When I'm away and I choose to partake in all of this, I feel like junk afterwards. So it's almost kind of a good thing every once in a while, I think, for them to be exposed to that, just so they know like what they're going to choose for themselves when they're out of our houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, anyway, let's do a quick round of like, okay, so in acute, and obviously there's all kinds of different illnesses, but what are some of the things that maybe our listeners wouldn't think of doing when there's stuff going on with their kids or with themselves?
So yeah, I think I mentioned the elderberry syrup. We used to do that so much more. I actually don't do it as much as I used to, but I feel like it's a really great tool. We talked about the inner defense. I also really, really like, I had grabbed some of my products here. The Cellcore has a cytoimmune. So when people are sick, I found that this product works very well, or when people are coming down with something to like hold it off.
What is in that? I use a lot of Cellcore things, but I've never used that one.
I love this one. So there's black cumin seed, cordyceps mushrooms, neem, horsetail, gymnina, is that how you say it? Leaf, quercetin, and then their regular bioactive carbon, fulvic acid mix, raspberry leaf is in it.
Okay.
So I love this product. I keep it on hand in the wintertime, especially along with my inner defense. And then I'll occasionally also like pop them like some Pau d'Arco because I like that. And then, yeah, these are my plant stem cells that are some of my favorites this time of year. Black currant's like super high in vitamin C. And then propolis is a good one. That's
Mm.
the B one. So those are just some of besides my essential oils, like with thieves and what else do I love? Exodus 2, I love for like to just keep on hand to make sure that things are on the way out or that the body just has the support that it needs.
Bronwyn, how about you?
Um, I feel like I should mention homeopathics again, and some of those are actually could have gotten our first round as far as preventatives because you can actually use some homeopathics like you would want to use a vaccine. Like you would take a certain dilution of like the measles homeopathic to kind of type the body so it remembers what to do, or um, whooping cough, or some of these other ones. So I've invested in a kit of homeopathics to be able to do that, and also actually a good
All
place to
that. Isn't it called something when you're using them
uh,
like that?
prophylaxis. Is that what you mean?
Maybe. Maybe that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. A good place to start with homeopathics is with cell salts
Mm.
because they're just like the mineral combinations that start kind of addressing lots of things. And there's some thought, there's like, I don't know, just I think 12 of them. Um, so I like using those too, particularly if somebody has something going on, but they're not sick. They're just like, I don't know, some conditions like skin conditions or things like that, that I'll use those and realize that their body just kind of needs some mineral support specifically. And there's some thought that maybe the homeopathics are all working based on their mineral typing and stuff. But I don't. Okay, so back to the question at hand. Like when my kids are sick, well, hydration. So the tea and the chicken soup are kind of always happening. I like to do the raindrop therapy on their back. If they have a fever, I really try not to use Tylenol or Advil to bring it down. I will if they are miserable and cannot sleep. Um, but if they're miserable and they can sleep, I don't. I'm a little bit of a tough mom. Like in the daytime, I just try to kind of like ease all their discomforts, but not just dope them on Tylenol consistently because Tylenol actually it reduces several things in the liver. One of them is glutathione. And so then you actually can't do all of the detoxing you need to do during your illness. So it's, again, suppressing a symptom. I want them to have that fever. And so I don't try to suppress it. But peppermint essential oil, like diluted or on the back or in the belly button or on the feet, will often bring down a fever by, I've noticed, exactly 2 degrees. So if they have like a 101, it will usually bring it down to a 99. And if you're tracking with me on that, but you feel totally different at 99 than you did at 101. You felt like you were dying at 101, right? So I know that there's like a huge comfort change in that. It's just like literally cooling the body, but the body is still doing its fever response. It's not suppressing it from the nervous system. Um, I do like thieves for sure. Thieves has always been a favorite. We put that on the bottom of the feet. We put it in tea or under the tongue. It's kind of hot. Like if you put it on the stomach, it'd probably give you red skin. So I would dilute it if I wanted to do that. Usually it's just on the feet. I'll also diffuse that. Um, Also oregano, thyme. Those are part of the raindrops. They would be going on the spine and on the feet. Mountain savory is like a type of oregano, but a little bit stronger, a little bit different. And then all the different kinds of eucalyptus for lungs, for opening up the lungs and getting you breathing better and easier. But also lemon really helps mucus to thin. And so I use lemon essential oil. Like a really gentle way to do this on a baby would be like when I had a baby and they have a cough, like a croupy cough. I oil up my baby, olive oil, on the chest, on the back, on the feet. And then I start with lavender because lavender is really calming and opens up the muscles. So lavender, then do lemon. It's starting to break down the mucus. So I'm doing these in layers. Then I come in with thieves that helps the immune system respond. And then I drive it in at the end with peppermint. Some people don't want to do peppermint on their babies. That's some for you to do your own research. I'm doing it diluted and it's a small amount so it's not on their face. So that has always worked really well for me with babies and coughs. Um, And then, depending on the illness, colloidal silver can be really amazing. Colloidal silver can go in the eyes, and essential oils cannot go in the eyes. So that's great if you have something like pink eye or a sty. This isn't even an illness, but just a sty in the eye. Colloidal silver, we've seen that work better than an antibiotic in the eye
Unless
for
you
those.
still have breast milk, then by all
Oh,
means put that in the eye.
that's a
Or
good
one drop
point.
of or frankincense oil, just a little bit on your fingertip and putting it right on the sty has taken it away every time for us.
Really? Wow.
Every time. Yeah.
Wow.
We've never had any styes.
The breast milk though is pretty great. I don't have any more right now.
I know. I used this breast
You
milk
don't,
when I had
Bronwyn, what's wrong with
littles.
you?
Breast milk was like that goes in your eye, and everybody's fine. Like it's just crazy.
Amazing, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I think those are all great tips. The only things I would add that we tend to do during illness, one, phytonutrition is
Oh,
really great for immune
that's a
system
great
support. So it
product.
has flaxseed oil, it has frankincense and boswellic acid, a couple other things in it. That's really powerful. We love the raindrop for illness and extra inner defense, extra Ningxia red, extra sunshine. Yes, not really working on the fever until it gets too high. We also like Believe oil, the blend Believe oil for fevers. If it does get up, above 103, we'll do that. But I also wanted to just mention emotional support and potential emotional release work. And I bring this up because my son, he had um, COVID like 2 Decembers ago. And after that, he continued to get sick every 4 to 6 weeks for like a year. Every 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, it ruined his athletic seasons, which is really sad. But we eventually, I was like, you know what? Like, what? Maybe there's like some emotional component, what's going on? And so we did an emotion code session. And also took him up for prayer at our church, like just pray over him. We did both of those things at the same time. And I don't want to discount that it was the prayer. It definitely may have just been that we just needed to pray over him and that whatever was going on just kind of released. Also during the emotion code session, it did come up that there was still like the like COVID, like the energetics of COVID in his body. And so, it helped to release some of that. So there, I just think we are emotional and physical and spiritual beings. And so making sure that we're addressing all of those things. I also will we have it's called a Viscera scan. And so you can scan the body and it'll also show like what emotions are coming up. And so when the kids get sick, I do try to use like oils that are supportive of those emotions and also just kind of get them to talk. Like, is there anything that's really stressing you? And because we know that stress, hijacks our bodies and our immune systems, and it's a lot easier to get sick when we are emotionally at a low place or in a hard space. Other thing I'll say, just this is more on like kind of just looking environmentally on with your kids and what's going on, like screens, right? Our kids tend to like to be on screens, right, as a generation. And I was noticing with Grant during that time when he was getting sick all of the time, we have in our office, we have like a closet. So I have my office here, and then we have a closet because it actually is a bedroom. And he has his like schoolwork computer set up in there. And so he goes and he'll do his work in there. I'll be working out there. He's working away in the closet. But he was spending a lot of like his work time in the closet where there's no light source. And so that was one thing we finally had to think about adjusting for him, because it's like you are not getting like, yeah, you're going out and like doing a workout, but you're not, then you're like all day in this like dark space, and that cannot be good for your health. So we switched that up, had him like coming out into the open space to do a lot of his work that didn't have to be on the computer. And that I think that was a helpful piece as well.
Hmm.
But it's a journey, it's a learning journey.
What's so interesting about the cycling of every 4 to 6 weeks? A practitioner that I go to, because we're all practitioners, but we also go to practitioners, right? Because we know
Mhm.
the value.
Mhm.
So she was explaining, she's an NAET practitioner, and she was explaining how our bodies have like an operating system, and we just like run the last system. And so even if it was a system of like illness, we're still alive, we're still in homeostasis in a sense, right? So it just keeps running the same like defaulty system until we can reprogram and do a new system. And sometimes that can just be an emotional shift or prayer, certainly, and like a spiritual shift of, you know, submitting to the Lord and trusting in Him and letting go of something. And suddenly that we have a new operating system to operate under and don't have to keep running that cycle of illness again.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I mean, literally after it was within a week's time where we did an emotion code session. We took him up to the front, laid hands on him. He got prayer and he didn't get sick again for like 6 to 8 months. I mean, every 4 to 6 weeks. And he went an entire like season, athletic season, nothing for like 6 to 8 months. And that was I was like, hallelujah. Now we're just back to like the normal seasonal getting, a little cold or whatever. So grateful for that. Yeah, I think that this is enough for us all to chew on for today's episode. We threw a lot of stuff at you. Hopefully, you can take one or two things and apply it to how you do things with your family. But the last thought I want to leave you with and remind you of is that you are the mom. Trust your innate wisdom.
Mhm.
Have a great day. Take care, guys.